When Robert got home, he found his wife Kathy reading in the living room. He greeted her warmly and asked her how her day went. She answered, "Oh, same old, same old." "I'm Joseph. This is Input English." So what did Kathy mean by same old, same old? Well, in the early part of the 20th century, the answer would have been same old thing, the routine, the monotony. But later in the 20th century, it became common for people to say same old, and to emphasize the monotony, they would say it twice. A lot of times when people say the word old, they leave the D off. They don't pronounce it. So same old is the way you tend to hear this phrase. It's fairly common. It just means the usual, the monotonous usual stuff. So Robert asked where the boys were. Kathy looked up from her book again and said, "Oh, they're out in the backyard horsing around." Now, what does she mean by that? Horsing around is a common expression for acting in a silly or noisy way. She reassured Robert that she had put Oscar in charge and he was to look after the boys. This caused a big grin from Robert because of the absurdity that she would assign the well-being of an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old to a dog. This lighthearted banter was common for them. Robert asked Kathy what she was reading. She said, "Meditations by Marcus Aurelius." She continued by pointing out this was a new translation by Gregory Hayes, and it's much easier to read than the old translations. She's enjoying this book. Robert asked, "What's it about?" Now this is where Kathy needs to be a little careful, because she went to law school and studied literature and philosophy. But Robert is a more practical man. He has not read great works of literature, and so he really didn't know what this book was about. Now, she doesn't want to create problems, and she certainly doesn't want to hurt his feelings, and so she answered factually. She said, well, Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome, but he was also a great Stoic philosopher, and we are lucky that a manuscript of his meditations survived all these years. The translations of meditations in the past were very difficult to read. They were opaque. Very scholarly, I'm sure, but very difficult to read. But this new Gregory Hayes translation is very approachable and very enjoyable. She then asked him how his day went, and he paused. He said, "It would have been fine except for Hank. We got into it again today." He continued by saying that he was fed up with Hank. He was up to here with Hank. She asked, what did he do this time? Robert said, well, nothing really different. It's just that when I tell him the way I want things done, he tends to pick it apart. He finds fault with everything I say. He has a lot of opinions. Robert wondered if Hank laid awake at night trying to cook up new ways to get under Robert's skin. Robert hadn't figured out a way to get along with him thus far. Now, Kathy had heard about this conflict with Hank in the past. It was not uncommon for Robert to come home hot under the collar, and the cause was frequently Hank. When he would get home after one of these encounters with Hank, he would explain how Hank had pulled some stunt at work and had created all sorts of problems. On hearing this today, Kathy paused and said, let me ask you a technical question. So this is a code word between these two people who've been married for a long time and have tried to figure out how to not irritate each other. Neither can recall where the phrase came from, but they concocted this way of dealing with each other so as to prevent irritation when one asks an innocent question that could be interpreted badly. So when Kathy asked if she could ask a technical question, Robert was on notice that she was going to say something that might be irritating to him, but he should not be irritated. He should just listen to the question and answer factually. When he heard her say that, he said, "Shoot." What he meant was, "Sure, ask your question. Shoot. Shoot me the question." Kathy simply asked, "Are you trying to get this off your chest, or would you like me to actually weigh in and give you some advice?" Well, at this point, Robert really was probably just trying to get it off his chest, but being a smart guy, mindful of the fact that Kathy's advice is usually on point, he said, "No, I would love some advice if you can help me with this. Advice would be very welcome." Kathy said, "I was just reading a passage in Meditations that actually covers this." She said, "Let me see if I can find it so I can read it to you. It's really what we should be talking about here." Ah, yes, here it is. The impediment to action advances the action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Robert looked at her in a puzzled way, not understanding. Then Kathy said, "Marcus Aurelius was talking about people. The obstructions he's talking about are people. They're in the way. They're interfering with progress. And what he's saying is focus on the people, figure out a way to work with them, and you'll win." She then asked how long Hank had been with the company. Robert estimated 5 years. Her next question was, does Hank know the business, and does he have a lot of knowledge about the business and how to help customers effectively? Robert says, well, in that area, he's among the best. He knows lots. Her next question was even more to the point. She asked, if you were to lose Hank from the business, would the business suffer? Would he be hard to replace? Robert had to agree that that was the case, that the young kids that he was able to hire these days simply don't have Hank's knowledge. Kathy said, then I recommend a new hobby for you. I recommend you try to figure out a little bit more about what makes Hank tick. See if you can find some common ground with him. Turn him into an ally. Don't deal with him as an adversary. He's not the enemy. He's an asset for your company. Robert said, that's not going to be easy. She said, I didn't say it was going to be easy. I'm implying it's going to be worth it. She said, you know what's at the heart of this, really, is the difference between a manager and a leader. These days, companies tend to hire managers, but the managers have trouble getting things done properly because people don't want to follow them. They're doing their job based on their job title, but it doesn't make it any easier if people don't want to do what they've asked them to do. However, in a good organization, people in these key management positions show a great deal of leadership. And by showing leadership, the people who work for them in the company naturally want to follow them. They want to cooperate with them, and they want to work more as a team with others. Now, Robert actually understood that. He was thinking of a fellow he knew years ago who he had worked for in another company, And the fellow had great skills in getting people to do not only what he told them to do, but do so willingly. He frequently would say things like, "This is the way we do this here. If someone has a different approach that they want to talk about, let me know. But for now, this is the way I'd like to do it. So on this one, follow me." So Robert summarized what he had learned in this little discussion by saying, so I need to get over the fact that he has been irritating me for a long time. We need to find some common ground, and I need to turn him into an ally. Not necessarily a friend, but an ally, someone I can count on. She said, right. Robert asked, how do you propose I do that? You're not saying we should have him over for dinner next week or something like that. Kathy said, no, nothing like that. She then asked, do you think that Hank knows that you have been irritated with him? Have you behaved in a way that he would get the message that you weren't happy with what he was doing? Robert thought about it for a moment and said, oh, I'm sure he's aware. Kathy said, that's you're in. This is what a good leader does. You can't control what he does. You can only control what you do. If you have done or said things that would make him feel unappreciated, then I would recommend you talk to him about that. Just deal with it head on. Just bring it up, talk to him man to man, asked if he was aware of that problem. When he says yes, simply say, well, I'm going to make that right. Now, do not apologize, because people are so used to cheap apologies. Don't give him a line like, sorry, Hank, because he's not going to be impressed. The way to handle it, when he admits that you have dealt with him in a way that bothered him, just tell him you're going to make it right. Without apologizing, you're going to make it right. And then follow up. Say, going forward, I'd like to listen to your ideas. You're a valuable member of the team, and I think you need to be heard. Kathy speculated that Hank would not expect this response and would be rather charmed by it. It would then put the ball in his court to decide what sort of behavior he should be showing at work going forward. And then, of course, you should follow through on your word. You told him you were going to listen to his ideas, and you should do so. But you are the manager, you are the leader, and you should continue to lead. Robert said, I think I can do that. I think that's a great idea. Given all the conflict he and I have had in recent weeks, I really have nothing to lose and a lot to gain. This might be the best way to patch this up between the two of us. Robert was very satisfied with the advice he had received. It was unexpected, but greatly appreciated. Before he left, he asked her to read the quote from Marcus Aurelius one more time. She said, "The impediment to action advances the action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Robert smiled and said, "That's what I'm going to do." With that, he went out in the backyard to find the boys and see what kind of mischief they were getting into. What we know is that the following day at work, he called Hank into the office. When he started talking to Hank, he was a little clumsy, but soon he got into his rhythm and expressed the thoughts that he and Kathy had reviewed the night before. He confirmed that Hank was aware that Robert had been irritated with him and had made it known. Hank was quite surprised that Robert approached this in such a manner. When he heard Robert say he was going to make it right going forward, he thought, what a relief. In the coming weeks, each of these fellows who had been working together for several years looked for opportunities to cooperate with each other and add value. The days of argumentative encounters went away. It was several weeks later that Robert thought back to that time that he had spoken with his wife about this nagging problem and how she quoted a recommendation from a fellow who's been dead for a couple of thousand years, and this turned out to be the solution to the problem. This story about a conversation between Robert and his wife, Kathy, was designed to give you a lot of useful and interesting expressions, including a lot of phrasal verbs, but everything is in context. The story is fictional, but the quote from Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic philosopher and former emperor of Rome, is real. If you like episodes like this, be sure to click on this one next. See you soon.